Okay.
Hi.
Not you. Hi, guys. Welcome back to our channel. If this is your first time, I'm Elsie, and
I'm
this
Tony.
is... Okay. Today, we're talking about a very, I'd say, sensitive, and because this topic brings up a lot of emotions. So, I'll try not to be emotional. You shouldn't either. So, today, well, what are we talking about? We're going to talk about racism. Yeah, some parts of it anyway, not the whole, because it's quite a broad topic, isn't it?
Sure.
So, first of all, I'll just wait for you to finish drinking your water.
No, not at all. Just wait.
Okay, so I'd just like to ask, first of all, do you think that there's racism against white people?
Do I think there's racism against white people? I do in many instances.
Yeah.
Now, having said that, it may well be justified.
Okay.
When I say it may well be justified, let's use the example of Cambridge University admitting students from underprivileged backgrounds. Almost by definition, underprivileged includes some element of non-whiteness, if you like, almost.
Yeah.
Although there were poor white kids as well, kids from poor white backgrounds there too. But these people were being privileged, presumably at the expense of other better academically qualified students to enter, because the university has finite resources, finite spaces. Now, when I say may be justified on the basis that you were trying to do something to improve society as a whole, then yes, there can be a case for privileging certain groups. What I don't agree, though, is that people should pretend that this doesn't happen and why it's happening. So I think that any decisions which are made out with the normal, the normal criteria, whether it's for entering into a place like Cambridge or for getting a job or whatever, if that decision is made purely on the applicant's merits, then that's even. But when the decision is made on socio-political grounds, well, yes, that is discrimination, but it may be a good or necessary thing. So that's what I've got to say. I don't want to be prejudiced against people of colour or people of any background.
Right. So you do think that white people, in terms, let's still use Cambridge as an example, that because there's I would call it a quota system of saying, like, let's say you partition a certain, a part of your admission process to underprivileged people. For instance, okay, we're going to admit 2,000 people this year, and 50 of them are definitely going to be non-white people. So black, brown, just generally people of color. And you think that that's discrimination against, but is that racism though?
Well,
because I would agree with you and say that's discrimination in the very sense of the word, because if you're taking preference of a certain group of people over another group of people, that is discrimination. And like you say, it's probably justified. Not probably, it is justified.
Well,
because time and time again, non-white people have been underprivileged. And I'm from a development background, so we're talking about inequality all the time. So in order for, and obviously inequality in society, it can never be taken out, it can reduce, but you cannot necessarily do away with it completely. But people can only make the effort to try and reduce the the level of inequalities in society. And I feel like that's what people do in different institutions, even when it comes to gender, or even when it comes to religion, or even when it comes to ethnicity and stuff like that. So yes, it is justified, not probably justified, because maybe you don't agree with me, but you will agree with me that these people have been under, they've not been privileged over the years, and it's only fair that they be given the opportunity. Because if it was like, okay, we just admitting people, it's like white people being admitted all the time. But the problem comes where it's like, oh, there's a black person that did worse than a white person, but is still being admitted. Even in that instance, I will give an example of where I come from.
Right.
You know, the high school system in Ghana is in such a way that you're admitted on merit. Like the high schools are graded, so there are A class schools and B class schools and C class schools and whatever. And if you went to an international school and got a certain grade, and then someone from a rural area somewhere with no water and electricity got the same grade, you will probably go to like a C class school, and that person would go to an A class school. Because if you think about the factors that come into play, it's like, wow, this person really walked 5 miles to fetch water, went to school, came back home, did their homework with a flashlight, and still got the same grade as you. You really do not deserve to be in the same like, you really do not deserve that position.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I don't know what you think about it, but I think that if you take a group of white people and you take a group of black people, it's the upbringing. Like, I would say, obviously I do not have the numbers to back it, but then generally, maybe the reason why Cambridge is giving these people, like, it's, let's say in quotes, lowering standards for people, underprivileged people, is maybe because they've not been exposed to the same kind of opportunities as these people that you it's like, I expect you to do better, really. I feel like that's the message, really, that you're expecting these people to do better. And I was surprised to learn that they lower their standards, because I have friends who've gone to Cambridge and they've been like really well deserving. So I've always known that there was a quota system, but I didn't know that their standards were being lowered. I just thought that it was, if there was a black person that got all A's and a white person that got all A's, just because they were trying to level out the inequality, they'll just like give the black person. So this is a first for me, hearing that Cambridge was lowering their standards for underprivileged people.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it just, maybe that's indicative of how much of this is hidden, in the sense, or hidden in plain view. It's not that anyone's particularly made a secret of it, but in general, we hear a lot more about discrimination when it's oppression or perceived oppression of a minority group than the other way around. Some people would say, I've heard, I'm sorry I can't give you the name, but I have heard it's a black person say, a black person cannot be guilty of racism, and that's
I would disagree with that anyway, but I feel like the reason why people say stuff like that is because, like, when a group of people have been oppressed for so long, and then now it's like, well, can the oppress?
Well, yes, in the sense that...
But they can, though, can't they?
Yeah. An analogy which might... I hope this doesn't sort of upset anyone, because it's not intended to upset anybody. But if you take a child who's been abused, that child may grow up with an absolute detestation of that and become a model parent. Absolutely. Treat their children with love and with respect and bring them up in total safety. By the same token, that child may also perpetuate that cycle of abuse, as is well known.
Yeah.
And I feel that analogy works for any kind of oppression that we can either handle it positively, say, I've been made to suffer, I will never ever inflict that kind of pain on another person, or I've been hurt and now I just carry on the cycle,
Right.
Either because through malice, or genuinely through, that's the way I've been incultured in that sense. I've been brought up in that way. It's just the normal way to behave.
Maybe people just see it to be payback time. Have you ever seen do you there are people that just feel empowered by oppressing people? So like the example you gave, like if you were in school and you had always been bullied in primary school, and then you went to high school, and then you were like, I refuse to be bullied like this again. And can you imagine if maybe your high school experience wasn't even going to be the same as your primary school education, but you're being proactive, you don't even want to give anyone the chance, so you're now the bully.
You are now the bully, yeah.
So it's like now everyone is scared of you, like, oh my god, yeah, this person, you cannot go near him, and that's that's your shield, that's your way of not allowing anyone to treat you the way you were treated some years ago. So yeah, you're right, you could take it and make it be a lesson and be like, wow, I do not want anyone to feel the way I felt. And then you can be like the sweetest person ever. It's the same thing if black people have been experiencing racism. They could say that this is not a good feeling, and I wouldn't want anyone to feel that way. Or, well, you've been oppressing me all this while.
Yeah.
It's your turn to feel. But do you really think that black people do that? Like, are black people, I want you to give me like an example where black people have been racist towards white people, or like necessarily oppressed them the way white people have oppressed black people.
The way white people have oppressed, well, probably not in the sense that white people traditionally
not to that extent, because I don't, the slavery is illegal now,
the
so
historical moment is totally changed. But as far as claiming priority, if you like, in things now, which white people obviously claim priority over black people, whether it was for seats on a bus or anything else, the day-to-day things, the places they could eat or drink, whatever it happened to be, there was all these things long after slavery was abolished. So yeah, they exercised that kind of right, and that was a right which they should not have had. Absolutely. And now the circle seems to have turned, that black people, once again, we're talking generally here, we're not picking out any one particular black person, because there are many, many people who are sound and comfortable in the company of people of other races, blacks and whites. But the general thing now is that whites are more, if you like, of a beleaguered population than any other. Now, some would say, well, they deserve it. They're getting a bit of their own back. Maybe. And the worst, of course, is that we're going back generations to say how coloured races have suffered at the hands of white races. Now, that's another thing as to whether does somebody's great-grandchild have to pay for the sins of their great-great-grandfather if they're not perpetrating any of those things themselves.
Well, yeah.
Well, it does seem a bit unfair. Your great-grandfather was a burglar, so therefore we're going to punish you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that the problem is where, well, people are still experiencing racism to this day, and it's not even a white and black thing. It's, different races towards different races. I have friends in China, and they'll tell you how it's funny, because the only kind of racism that gets all the limelight is white on black racism. Whereas I have friends in China who tell you about how you'd go to a restaurant and they will refuse to serve you just because you're black, and they can tell you that, oh, there's no food, and then just when you step out,
That's right.
they will be serving someone else. So it's like, you can't do anything. But yeah, so I don't think it's a matter of, do you really think it's a matter of some people's great grandparents doing something and then their great grandchildren but
getting punished? Well,
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, look at the number of states in the USA that are in the process of or in considering giving reparations to people who have suffered through slavery and through all the rest. And we're certainly talking about 3 and 4 generations back.
Do you think that the effects of of slavery linger on even
absolutely.
generations after?
They're in terms of people are saying, well, if we can get a few dollars out of this, why not? Now, in one sense, I find it very hard to blame somebody if there's a chance to collect, as I say, some money. Why not? You can't blame somebody for taking it, especially if they're poor in the first place. But as to whether the principle is right, that people in the 21st century should be paying for what somebody else did in the 19th century.
Well, maybe because like you said, maybe the effects of slavery linger on even today. So maybe not share money, that's a bit of a stretch.
Yeah.
But maybe to still inculcate policies that try to undo the effects of slavery. But are people really sharing money?
But they're looking for money. I mean, the big thing is money, unfortunately, is to become the thing which you have to sort of give if you want to show you're really sorry. Whereas in actual fact, it might be a better thing. For example, okay, you guys have suffered because of lack of opportunity.
Yeah.
One of the reasons you had lack of opportunity has been lack of education. So we're going to pour millions, or in this case billions, into specifically educating people of disadvantaged backgrounds.
Yeah.
To enable you then to be able to take your rightful place as doctors or scientists or as politicians or as anything else, you know. But in fairness, if the opportunities are there, it is up to you guys to make use of them, not just to laugh at them or say, I don't want to sort of go down the white road by increasing my educational level.
Well, maybe not everyone wants to go to school. Is that okay?
Okay.
Maybe some people want to be tailors and stuff like that.
Okay, so
they want to be fashion designers.
I'm with you. So let's give people training, whether you feel like vocation-based training as well. Help to start businesses.
But do you think that people are refusing to be helped? Like, how do I say? Do you think that people are just dwelling on, oh, my ancestors were slaves, and then they're still in that pit, like, whereas they're not even supposed to be there? Do you think that at a certain point it should have gotten better? Like, black people should have at some point decided their fate for themselves, like educated their own children and tried to make a better life for themselves, but they still blamed slavery.
Yeah, I think there is a sort of and not just in the context of slavery, but I think the overarching thing is what you would call a victim mentality. Now, the victim mentality, once again, you can empathize sometimes with people who have that, people who have suffered in any way, or whose relations or even their great-grandfathers have suffered. You can see that. But the whole thing, though, is that it is not doing the people who are alive just now any favors, even those who have suffered, to have the victim mentality. Why? Because when you have the victim mentality, then you are not making progress. You're not going to make real progress in your life because you are hurt, you are wounded, you're shielded from sort of any kind of real moving on, making change in your life, because that is now your identity. I am a victim, I have suffered because of whether it's white people because of the unjust structures of capitalist society, wherever it happens to be, instead of saying, okay, here I am, this is my background, this is my color, this is my whatever, here I am today, and now I want to be here. What steps do I have to achieve that? And go to work.
Right. But would you agree with me that even though, like, would you agree with me that that's easier said than done?
Absolutely.
Because like, I know you're saying that it goes generations back, but we really cannot overlook the fact that it will affect them somehow. Because if your great grandfather was a slave, so, and that's why your grandfather was not educated, then your grandfather didn't see the need for an education, and that is why your father was not educated,
right?
And that's why you're not educated as well. Now, if you're not educated, and maybe, like, let's say that you even want to, you're the one, you want to be the change, but you're in a community where you don't even get the opportunities. You're poor, and you do not have the means to even take your children to school, and that's how the cycle, that's where the cycle is. And that's why people are still hurt and bitter from things that happened hundreds of years ago, because they're still feeling the effects. The effects have not gone away. They're still feeling the effects of things like that. Because can you imagine if you were born in a very poor environment, how many people are able to pull themselves out of these kind of environments? And that's why schools like Cambridge would give opportunities to underprivileged people, because like the saying goes, rich people will always be rich and the poor people would always be poor. Like, there's this idea, like there's this fantasy that you will be born in a poor environment and you grow up and become rich. But when does it happen, and how does it happen? It happens for some people because once in a while you get a rich person adopting some poor person somewhere, and that's how they go to a good school, and then they become someone. But how many times is it that there's someone from a poor background, and being poor, it's really not even just about money. It's about your mentality.
Exactly.
And you're poor and you don't even think about certain things, and that's why the rich people are always going to be rich, because they see opportunities everywhere. But you've been raised by someone who you think a certain way, like you.
That's right.
It's like you can have an opportunity in front of you, but you cannot even identify it, whereas you on the sideline, you're like, well, the thing is right in front of you, why wouldn't you And so it's like, what if you have a father who was investing all of his money on, Jordan shoes? You grew up thinking, oh, that's what your interest is. Whereas it's not. But is it your fault that the person who brought you up? These kind of things are very difficult.
Well, you're right when you say the mindset thing is even more important than the money, because of the poor people who have made it, apart from the ones who've been adopted by rich ones, which is very much small, the poor people have used that as a springboard to claw themselves literally in some cases out of the gutter and really make it big time, in the same way that sort of like kids who've not been finished up becoming champion boxers or whatever, because that's been the. But if the mindset is obviously that, then a person can make the best of their life, the best of themselves. But part of that mindset is being willing to admit certainly where they are, but being willing to adopt the new mindset of, I'm going to beat this. And if that's missing, and I think that's the kind of thing which needs to be shared with people who have got the victim mentality. Listen, we're not blaming you for that. If we'd suffered what you've suffered or your grandparents suffered, maybe we'd be twice as bad in the situation. But thank God we haven't. Now, I can hold your hand and I can say it's a real shame for you, or I can say to you, listen, this is a shame what you happened to your great-grandfather. But now, get a grip. Yes, you need to, because thinking about that, unfortunately, is not going to help you. whether it's your feelings of hurt or your feelings of anger, they're not going to help you. If you want to go forward, you have to let these things go. You know, we've been at this for about 20 odd minutes, so we could be talking here for weeks, I'm sure.
I know. But, well, final words?
Final words.
Or do you want me to say the final words?
Well, okay, I'll say the next two final words. Really, so much depends on if you think in computer terms, there's the hardware and there's the software. It depends what software we're running.
Yeah.
The computer itself, even a Mac, is a neutral piece of equipment, but the software it runs determines what comes out of it.
Yeah.
And this is the thing, when people are running a negative or highly virused software, then things come out which are not good.
Yeah.
And if you're running a clean, decent, well-designed software without viruses, that's there. So the challenge really is to get people to be willing to
change their software.
Yeah. That's my tuppence worth. What's yours?
Well, what is mine? Well, mine is that, like you said, it's up to you to decide whether you want to continue down that road of victimization, or do you want to change it for you and the generation after you and the generation after you and the generation after you. And then, I mean, it does go back to at least being given the opportunity somehow.
Right.
So I do get that you say it's a form of discrimination, but unfortunately that's really the only way that the inequality in the world can be somewhat reduced for people to be given the like more opportunities, even though it might seem unfair, but you know that unfortunately that's how it has to be. So yeah, those are my last words, that unfortunately sometimes people in the minority have to be given more opportunities. And funny thing is, even though they're given the opportunity, they might never ever come to a time where they would be on par with their counterparts, but at least they're making progress, and that's a good thing. So yeah, people, we've come to the end of the program. I think it was quite an interesting conversation, and I learned quite a lot. And I hope you enjoyed the conversation as well. And I hope you enjoy the conversation as well. So if you've enjoyed this program, kindly like, comment, subscribe,
and share.
And until next time, it's bye for now.
Bye.
If you like this video, kindly like, comment, and subscribe. You can also find us on other social media platforms, on Twitter at Talk with Tony and on Instagram at talkwithtony.live. Don't forget, live, laugh, and most importantly, love. Watch out for the next video. It's bye for now.